Good evening. This is the Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meeting of January 9th, 2013. First item on the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now if you'll remain standing for a moment of silence for our military personnel worldwide. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. First, I would like to welcome our newest commissioner, Ken Ryder. Welcome to the Urban Renewal Agency.
Thank you.
Now we'll go into the first action item, and that is the selection of the Urban Renewal Agency Chair and Vice Chair. So nominations for the Chair of the Urban Renewal Agency are now open.
Chairman Ayers, I would like to nominate that you stay as our Urban Renewal Agency Chair.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hodson, second by Commissioner Dale, to nominate myself, Richard Ayers, as the Urban Renewal Agency Chair. Are there other nominations? Hearing none, then the nominations will be closed, and we need to take a vote, even so. So all those in favor of Richard Ayers to be the chair of the agency, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, and that passes unanimously. Now is the time to select the vice chair. So nominations for vice chair of the Urban Renewal Agency are now open.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Commissioner Hodson as Vice Chair.
And second.
Motion by Commissioner Hensley, second by Commissioner Dale, to nominate Brian Hodson as Vice Chair of the Urban Renewal Agency. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor of Brian Hodson as Vice Chair of the Urban Renewal Agency, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. It's passed unanimously.
Those are four-year terms, correct?
4-year terms. No one's talking me into any more than 2 left. Okay, announcements.
That's me. I'm just announcing that the Canby Library design meetings are coming up, and since this meeting's rebroadcast a couple of times, I thought it'd be a good idea to announce them. So the library would like to invite the community to share their thoughts, ideas, and dreams for the new Canby Public Library. The meetings are scheduled Tuesday, January 15th at the Canby Library at 6:30, Wednesday, January 30th at the Canby Police Department at 6:30, and Thursday, February 14th at the Canby Police Department at 6:30.
Thank you.
And if I may, that February 14th is going to be changed, and that decision was just made late afternoon, sorry, so you didn't know. It's going to be the 19th, which is the
19th.
following Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to comment, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I knew there was some discussion over changing that, and I thought we were going to wait till the first meeting and then pick the, but that's fine. The 19th is, that's fine. Moving it off of Valentine's Day is a good idea. Now, do we have video transmission capabilities down at the police station now? You said that it's going to be televised. Do we have facilities? Is it wired for live, so it will not be live?
It is not live.
So it will be taped?
Yeah, we can tape it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other announcements?
I have none.
Okay, now is an opportunity for citizen input on non-agenda items. So if any of our citizens would like to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda tonight, now is your opportunity. And I see Bob shaking his head no. Another no. Time to take up the consent agenda. The only thing on the consent agenda this evening is the minutes from the December 12th, 2012 Urban Renewal District Agency special meeting.
Chairman Chairman Ayers, I move that we accept the minutes, the consent agenda, which include the minutes for the December 12th, 2012 URD agency special meeting.
Second?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the December 12th, 2012 urban renewal meeting, was made by Commissioner Hodson and seconded by Commissioner Hensley. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and it has been passed unanimously. Now we're down to resolutions and ordinances, but I don't see anything
There are none,
under
sorry.
there. Okay. Next item is new business, and this is a presentation on industry clusters.
Yeah, I'm here to give that presentation.
Okay? As you're coming up, and I'm looking forward to the presentation, and I'm hoping that somewhere during your conversation you will answer a couple of questions that I had as I read all of the material. And if you could define what covered employment means and location quotient. Those are two items that were kind of new to me.
Well, we'll let this boot up. I don't know if it's been prepped or not today with the presentation, but Renata did a good job getting to this point, but she's not here, so I'm flying solo. Renata. Hopefully she's okay.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Todd Chase. I'm an economist with FCS Group. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I live in Clackamas County. Lived here about 20 years. And our company is based in Redmond, Washington. We have an office in San Francisco, California. So most of our work is on the west side of the United States and Alaska. Probably about 17 years ago, I worked with the city of Canby on your urban land needs study when I was a planning manager with OTAC. And then after that, we did some work on the Pioneer Industrial Park for the master plan effort. And so in the course of 17 years, I've seen a lot of positive change. Some communities change, and it's not always a good thing. But coming back to Canby, after 2 decades, I think it's been a real positive thing. So let's see if I can get this working here. I don't know if do I need a password?
I don't have it, I'm sorry.
No?
You
Should
better.
have made one for it. Should just go with it there. I'll get it.
That's good.
I don't see if she loaded it on.
She might be done getting ready for that meeting tonight.
That's it right up here.
Internet division.
There we go. So we're fortunate because we get to work with a lot of cities in, outside of major metropolitan areas as well as on the fringe of major metropolitan areas in Washington and Oregon and other places. And I see a big difference in how each area is dealing with the economic problem, the slow growth of the United States right now, and very tight fiscal budgets. And in general, I think Oregon is doing a pretty good job. Washington and other places tend to have more large employers to leverage, and those large employers that are based in those communities tend to invest close to home, so in their corporate headquarters. And the disadvantage I've noticed in Clackamas County and Oregon in general, so we don't have a lot of large employers other than Intel and Precision Cast Parts and Nike. Very few big companies. So it's wonderful when you can see companies invest in local areas because of the quality of life or because of some perception that's going to be better there than anywhere else. And I think that's what we're starting to see in Canby. So what I wanted to do is kind of run through what we found when we did this work for you with Renata's help. It was work that we've been building on with Clackamas County for many years. I was on the Clackamas County Economic Development Commission for many years, and then did a number of projects throughout Clackamas County, and a lot of economic opportunity studies for cities like Wilsonville and Lake Oswego and Happy Valley and Tigard and Sherwood, and, Portland, a whole bunch of cities in the region, and they all have different sets of industry opportunities. And some are focused more on office, some are focused on industrial, but they all have a different mix of what the market thinks it's good at. And what we've been able to do is show kind of graphically for every 100 acres where different types of companies add value throughout Clackamas County. And we have this kind of in Google Earth now, so you can fly around and see who's contributing to what part of the county. And this map is just a representation of Canby in the foreground, and then to the left would be Wilsonville, and to the thank you, and then further down to the right is Oregon City. Straight back is Cruz Way, and so it's not well labeled, but basically you can see that Canby is one of probably the prominent areas that are contributing to economic, in this case it's output for 100 acres in the region. And I guess if you showed this map about 10 or 20 years ago, it would probably, the bar sizes in Canby would probably be about a third the size of that. So it's kind of nice to see that. In the region, we measure GDP or gross domestic product. It's a measure of value added, which is a compilation of direct pay from workers to employees, business profits, and other corporate revenues that are retained each year, and taxes spent by those corporations. So it's a compilation of those things. Our 9-county region has a $121 billion GDP, and it's up from 2006 slightly, about 4.5%. Clackamas County is about 15.5 billion, so it's about 13% of the whole region, the 9-county region. And Canby's role within that is significant. It's about $652 million in GDP. We're able to measure this now using information from the state combined with some modeling information we get from a model called Implant, which measures GDP per type of job by different types of, about 300 different types of industries. In Canby, the growth has been pretty good over the last year. I think it's up about 2% for 1 year in GDP. And I don't know if you caught the Oregonian today, it mentioned that the wage growth in Washington County was the top in the country of all large counties. And that's a 1 year-to-year change, mostly because of Intel and Nike hiring, but it's significant. And while that's a different county than Clackamas County, it's a stone's throw away, and Clackamas growth has been in the top 100 in the country of all counties. So between Washington County and Clackamas County, it's been an attractive area for businesses to hire over the last year, and I think that's going to continue. When we looked at Canby, we're able to look at specific employers within Canby, and we define Canby as an area now. It's not just the city limits, but it's kind of a sub-area that the market defines between kind of south of Wilsonville, Canby, Aurora, Hubbard as kind of one area, all within a close proximity to I-5. And within that area, the clusters of industry that kind of jump off the charts really are wholesale trade, and that includes companies like Kendall Floral Supply, and they've invested a lot locally in recent years. Clean tech, and I'll talk more about that. I didn't expect to see that emerge in Canby, but if you define it broadly to include construction, energy, and telecommunications, and some transportation-related businesses. That clean tech sector is very big here, and it's something that is growing nationally, and it's a growth industry you'll see in the next few charts. High-tech manufacturing and software companies like Johnson Controls, Shimatsu, and Hawksoft. And Hawksoft is shown in the upper left there. They're a pretty new building they built recently. And those companies are also a major contributor regionally and locally.
Todd, if I could just ask a question there. I was thinking that maybe Johnson Controls would be up under like clean tech, because this plant makes batteries, like car batteries. And Johnson Controls, the corporation, does a lot of high-tech stuff in control devices, thermostats, things of that nature. But locally, it's a manufacturing plant for batteries.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Sometimes we lump high-tech in with clean tech, and sometimes we separate them. Because high-tech is already a defined cluster in Clackamas County's economic marketing, we wanted to keep it separate to be true to their methodology.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're right. I mean, it probably could be included in clean tech. I think if we were to, at the end of the day, define a clean tech niche, that would be probably the biggest one in Canby. And if you include companies like Johnson Controls, for sure that's a big, powerful niche. And you don't see it as strong in Clackamas County as a whole, or Washington County, so it is kind of unique here. Advanced manufacturing, metals and machinery, American Steel jumps off as one of the larger employers locally. Transportation and distribution is relatively small in Canby, but it's bigger as you get closer to I-5 in Aurora and places like that. If you lump the next three together, the food and beverage processing, nurseries and greenhouses, and ag and food, that becomes a pretty significant cluster locally as well. And separate, each one is important, but combined, it becomes a pretty impressive list of businesses. So these are the ones that you want to make sure that your land and infrastructure can accommodate. And some of these are growing faster than others. And to show you how they're growing, I'm going to define what this location quotient is and what it tries to do. What this measures is a propensity of a cluster to be in a location. So I give a lot of people examples of Hollywood, California, where the film industry is probably about 10 times higher than anywhere else in the country. So its LQ is 10. Here, the LQ of the film and media industry in Clackamas County is a little above 1. It's growing, but it's still down below 2. So it's not quite 2 times the national average. In this case, we're measuring against the 9-county regional average, not the national average. So for a company, or for clean tech, if that accounts for 10% of your companies or industries and can be, but it's only 5% in the 9-county region, then your LQ is 2 times that, 2.0. Some things have a 15 LQ, like nurseries and greenhouses and things like that, compared to the region. So it's a measure of your propensity, and usually it tells you what kind of businesses are attracted here naturally. It wouldn't be here if there wasn't a reason. You don't have to know exactly what it is. It could be cost of infrastructure is low. It could be because proximity to I-5 was important. It could be because the owner has a house here. You don't really know. But if you see this over time and how it evolves, you kind of get a feel for which companies are naturally inclined to locate there. And those are the ones that are market to. Otherwise, you're spending a lot of energy on companies that may not be inclined to be there. You'll see that the clusters contribute to about half of the GDP in the city. And when we do an analysis of these LQs, what we like to do is also look at how fast they're projected to grow. And you'll see in the next chart the clusters that we consider the stars are the ones that are highly concentrated and projected to grow the fastest over the next 10 years. Those are the ones that are more than likely to grow over the next 10 years faster than any other company. So they're already here, and they're going to grow. So you want to make sure you're accommodating their needs. The ones that are mature are already here, but they're not growing as fast as average. They're kind of slower than average growth. And then the other ones that are interesting to market to are the emerging ones, because for some reason they're not concentrated here yet, but they're growing faster than average. Clusters like healthcare are in that category. And so we want to make sure that you're accommodating that type of emerging opportunity. And the challenged ones are always the toughest because they're slow growth and they're not here, relatively speaking. So you don't want to spend too much time and energy marketing towards those typically. So when we looked at Canby and we actually used the data that we had for the area from the state, we were able to kind of determine how big these clusters are based on their, in this case, payroll that they pay each year. And so if you combine all the clean tech companies that we define as clean tech, so we're not including Johnson Controls, that bubble's one of the biggest in terms of pay. Also, it's in the star category because it's higher than average in terms of LQ, and it's projected to grow much faster than average. Another important one up there, way to the right, agriculture and food production, way over here. Right there. That's another big one and growing faster than average. And then education, I know, is a tough thing to market necessarily, but it includes mostly public schools. And because I think you're attracting a lot of students from outside the area, City High School and things like that, you have a large cluster there. You'll see that even bigger for places with community colleges or four-year colleges, extension studies programs. I think OSU has a program nearby.
They do, in Aurora.
So that could be contributing to that category as well. And then the metals and machinery cluster, the red one, is another star. And then the ones that are a little bit more challenged, the high tech, well, it's mature. It's just, still important, slowly growing. Wholesale trade, same way. It's growing slower than average, but it's a big contributor. The ones that are emerging potentially are the healthcare, professional business services, restaurants, and tourism-related clusters. And those are things that some of the strategies could identify and try to nudge a little bit more over to the right. And if you have maybe more proactive marketing aimed at those clusters, or more focus on tourism, recreation, or some type of accommodations for that, hotels, museums, things like that, you could begin to help cultivate those emerging clusters. Healthcare and professional business services, market tends to drive those on their own, but having a good downtown with kind of a Class A environment over time could help nurture that as well. Parking's a concern, I don't know if it is, but in a lot of cities that are growing, that sometimes becomes important to those companies. So their tenants and their employees and visitors have convenient places to park. So those are kind of reading between the lines of this cluster analysis. I mentioned the clean tech cluster and how that's kind of interesting to see that start to stand out locally as a niche. And I think we could talk more about proactive marketing for that. And what these folks need. They need broadband, cheap power, access, all types of things like that. The interesting thing about marketing to clusters is that you get more for your, I think, job creation than average jobs. They pay about 20% above the average rate pay rate for every job. In this case, they generate about 64% of your GDP in Canby, so they're supporting about 64% of your non-residential economy. Their employment base is growing. It's up from 50% last year to 54%, so they're growing faster than the non-cluster jobs. And so I think it's going to be important to identify these companies, make sure that they're feeling loved locally and that they can expand when they need to. And I think you've done a good job at that so far, but it's a matter of making sure we're attentive to that in the future. As I mentioned, the GDP in these clusters is up about 7% in real dollars in really since 2010. So that's this data is actually 2011. So it's really only about a 1-year difference. And the fastest growth is occurring in the advanced technology, metals, machinery, ag and food, and the wholesale trade categories. The interesting thing about this chart, the other category is higher than each individual segmented cluster, but that includes several categories like retail, office, professions that are not in the other clusters. And so even though they pay 20% less than average, if you combine all those jobs up, including home-based employment, they're still very significant, almost about 40% of their overall economy. So a lot of small businesses here to think about. And this was showing some of the data that I mentioned, that the key clusters in terms of GDP and how it's changing compared to other sectors, and then also the amount of job growth for the key clusters up about 9%, while the other sectors are down about 6% year to year. So they're definitely contributing more than they have in the past, and these other sectors are currently contributing.
That's really a significant number, the GDP per job in the key clusters.
Yeah, it's down, and they're becoming more efficient. About 100,000 per job. It's down a little bit, but I've been kind of seeing that in this economy, we're seeing that number go up. So it's kind of a telltale sign that job growth will happen probably in a year or two once the GDP growth or the income growth occurs. But it is a big number, 100,000 per job. And we see that a lot with high-tech, especially high-tech companies like Wilsonville. They're really well over $100,000 per job. The average compensation levels too. This is kind of part of that GDP number. High-tech on the high end on the right, 84,000 per job in average compensation, and then on the low end, ag and food, about a little less than 20,000 per job. These are county-wide numbers, but I wanted to share those with you because that's kind of what a lot of cities are trying to focus on, the family wage jobs, and so they tend to pay living wages for supporting a family, and it's mostly above $45,000. So the food and beverage, processing, and these other categories like trucking and distribution, metals, high-tech, healthcare, wholesale trades, those types of categories generate those. So that's primarily industrial users.
So years ago I used to know what the family wage threshold was. Roughly, is that 45? Is that roughly what it is
Yeah,
now?
I think the last time I checked it was about 43,000.
Okay.
And so that was about a year ago. So
Yeah, that's close.
it's up a little bit. These are your top 22 private employers. I'm not going to run through the whole list, but there shouldn't be any surprises there. I don't think, but it's an impressive list. for any city of any size to have some of these companies. A lot of these are national companies, some international, and I think it's a good mix of headquartered local companies as well as companies that have chosen to have an Oregon office location here.
The one on that chart that jumped out at me is number 11,
Yeah.
the Denny's.
Oh,
Are
Denny's.
are those full-time equivalent numbers, or that's just head count?
Yeah, it's this kind of gets back to that covered workforce question.
Oh,
you had.
okay.
So it's all the workers that they report paying wage unemployment insurance for
Okay.
at that location. So it could be part-time workers.
So it's
But
probably a
it's
lot more.
they're usually working at least 20 hours a
Okay.
week if they're being counted. So
Excuse me. Do you know if number 20, Ruan, if they're a wholly owned by Johnson Controls? Because that's who they work for, basically. And I've seen situations like that where, like Safeway trucks, the trucks don't belong to Safeway, it's a
right,
company that
right.
leases too, basically.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we can look into that. But
It's curious.
they're probably, if they're a subsidiary, they still have a separate employer identification number for them. So, yeah, we're tracking them separately. So, yeah, nice list. Again, all these, and assisted living is also one that, the marquee companies is on this list. And I don't believe they're doing all their, I think they're working here and they pay their workers from this location, but I think they're working all over the county, maybe 2 or 3 counties out of this location.
That could be. They do have a big facility out at Hope Village, so I don't know how big it is
Yeah.
relative to the rest, but
But yeah, 100 plus jobs. That's a big deal.
Provides in-home care.
I didn't
But
see,
he also
I
provides
didn't see
in-home
Columbia
care.
Helicopter on there. Or
Oh, yeah.
Did I miss it?
Dispatches the home care.
Yeah, that's interesting. They didn't show up even though we have Aurora in here.
Yeah, Aurora.
Um,
Last I knew, they had about 300 people in Oregon. I don't know if it's all in Aurora, but
Well, that's another good question. I'm going to make a note of that one too, because I would expect to see them. And they could be operating under a different name too. I don't know. We'd still see it. So there we go. So having this information in front of us, we were able to kind of work together with Renata and brainstorm about what some draft strategies might be. Each one of these could be refined as you prepare a work plan. I think the outcome of this would be to get your input so Renata can prepare a work plan for the coming year. And the first item would be to make sure you take steps to remain an attractive place to do business. And this typically means reaching out to businesses that are here now, making sure that their needs are met, that you understand their growth requirements, that they're getting the infrastructure, the water, sewer, power, broadband that they expect and need to grow. And so that's more of kind of an outreach effort. It could include some marketing, just by updating your vacant land supply maps and getting that information out in the brokerage community like you have been. Clackamas County is helping you with that, but that should be done right away. I'm also trying to help Clackamas County and Renata update your one-page Canby brochure, which we should have within the month. And so that'll be important. So the new city contacts will be on there, and new pictures of new projects and new buildings and all that. So that'll be good to have. Laying groundwork for future recruitment activities. This is a matter of continuing the partnership with Clackamas County and the regional partners, Greater Portland Inc., all these groups of the state, making sure that they're aware of the current businesses that are here and investing here, your vacant industrial lands that are here, and other commercial development opportunities near downtown, the investment the city's made in downtown, all those things. I mean, it's always good to remind folks what's going on at Canby, because if they're not seeing it on a regular basis, they probably can't appreciate it. So that's part of that one. The ag-related recruitment strategy could be important as that sector tends to grow over the next 10 years faster than average. And while it pays lower than average jobs currently, if you can get more of the food and beverage processing and value-added industries. I know companies like Dave's Killer Bread, they're looking to expand, and they might be pinched on space. And so if Canby can become kind of an attractive location for those Clackamas County companies that are closer in that need to expand, I think that would be a really good strategy right now. Getting to the supply networks of some of the larger food and beverage processors and users in the Portland region would be another good strategy. And again, just making sure that you're a location for supply chains that are feeding into Portland for, you know, local produce, local food, all that. You know, the Willamette Egg Farm nearby. I've seen you on Portlandia. You know, so you're getting, whether you like it or not, you're getting a reputation for being a location for that locally grown, you know, food and ag. The tourism-related destination idea is something that we just wanted to throw out there. I know you're working with the chamber. There's been efforts in that in the past. But I see this 99 corridor from here to Woodburn and Silverton with the Oregon Garden and things like that really becoming kind of an interesting corridor. And I know Clackamas County is focused on ag tourism and things that Canby might be able to do. You know, you already have the county fair, but you know, to leverage that to the next level, whether it's some kind of, you know, farm museum or, you know, some kind of a food and ag innovation center, or, you know, something that you can begin to leverage, I think would be important. I know the high school is also a potential kind of opportunity to work with them in the programs that the students have there, and some of the after-school activities and things like that. I think that's attractive to businesses as well that want to locate to an area because you have a unique high school program that's consistent with their, you know, theme.
I know this is outside of our city limits, but in the agricultural areas surrounding us, has been opportunities for retail, commercial kind of activities on farmland, like weddings at wineries and things of that nature. Is that something that, didn't the state just do something to help that, or the county? I mean...
It wouldn't surprise me, because there were limitations on that because of, well, businesses in county, you couldn't do that type of thing. But I think they have allowed some of that. I know in different counties that I'm aware of, they do allow that, and the places are busy every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's probably wouldn't surprise me.
And that's another good point, you know, and I think under this strategy, there's these subtasks or objectives, and that could become one to understand the new legislation and how it might relate. It may not be, I don't believe it relates to cities as much as unincorporated areas, as you said, but I think there could be opportunities. You know, weddings at Fur Point Farm. I don't know.
Postal Wait.
But if
Postal
there's a
Wait
winery
and St.
here-
Joseph's. Yeah. But those are the kind of things when people go to a wedding at St. Joseph's or something, you know,
Sure.
the spillover when they come into town
Sure.
for something is an opportunity for us.
Right. But I will make a note. There's another. This clean tech cluster, and you don't have to follow Clackamas County's definition for everything, but But I like the fact that we can begin to define it. We can begin to maybe identify what businesses are important to it, and you can have your own top 3 or top 4 cluster marketing strategies. And that might mean targeting the biggest conference in that cluster, making sure that Canby has a presence there. It could be just working with those companies more closely to make sure that their needs are met and that we understand them better, so that we know what limitations or what perceptions they have of Canby and the local area. But that's something that I think kind of surprised me from doing this work, that jumped out as a potential niche. And then expanding infrastructure for industrial development is something that I know you have in your master plan. You have long-range plans to do that, but trying to get a good handle on a proactive funding strategy for transportation and sewer and water line expansion is important. And I'm working with Wilsonville now, and it's very challenging just to build a $2 million sewer trunk line or water line upgrade, because no property owner wants to pay for that. The city doesn't have the money. It's not on the rates. And so it's kind of, as a result, Wilsonville has very little buildable land today over 5 acres in contiguous area that's not being land banked. So, I hate to see Canby get in that same position. And it would be nice to have a real proactive strategy on that infrastructure expansion.
Well, I think that's particularly important for us now that we'll soon have the bridge over the railroad to expand Sequoia Parkway, which is opening up opportunities for some large parcels that would be nice to see get filled soon.
Yeah, so that becomes a good focus for this year. You've already been encouraging downtown redevelopment. Renata wanted probably to add this one because you've done a downtown plan, you've invested in your downtown sidewalks and LEDs and open space. So, I'm not sure what more can be done. A lot of cities have facade programs and low or no interest rate loans for property owners that are fixing up their facades, but that doesn't appear to be the issue. So I haven't studied it in detail. But and parking, I mentioned parking just because in every downtown I've worked at, parking has always come up as some kind of a management headache or some kind of need there. I don't know if you have enough off-street parking spaces that are city-owned, but that's something I'm working on Lake Oswego right now. It's trying to make sure they have enough off-street parking for public parking so they can get more development in their downtown. Consider long-term employment land needs. Every 5 years or so, cities in Oregon do their urban land needs analysis and their economic opportunity analysis, and their housing needs analysis. Usually it takes a few years to get those things done. I think it's been a while since Canby's done their long-term needs, but given the fact that Wilsonville is kind of approaching build-out and that that there's very little large lots available, very few in the region that are for industrial purposes under 20 acres. Just a handful, I think it's under 5 now, and so I think it's important for Canby to continue to think about that, and while it takes 10 years or more to get those areas served and annexed and all that, we're in this for the long haul. And so after you do your work on this committee, there'll be another committee and another committee, but they'll be building on the work and the efforts that are done over the next year or two. And so Oregon's unique because there's state money for periodic review and for doing these types of land needs updates. So I think that you have capable staff, and it's a good thing to do every 5 or so years. So I wanted to make sure we had that in here. And that was a lot to accomplish in a year, so we kind of stopped at 8, didn't make it to 10. Didn't get to a top 10 list. But we'd be happy to, with your input, fine tune or add more. But I heard good input so far. So any other questions tonight?
Well, I appreciate your help. I read all of this, and now, I understand it a lot better now, and I see also opportunities for us, and I like to be able to look at this list and see where we can focus on some things to get the most impact sooner. It's pretty clear there's about 3 areas in there that it's kind of the low-hanging fruit, not to necessarily be successful in bringing somebody in, but at least getting the word out that we have these things. And I do think we're in better shape than maybe a lot of different places of the foundation we put in place to accomplish these things. So with our industrial park and the marketing and the activities that Renata's doing, a lot of the things you mentioned about us doing, I know are in the works of being worked on. So, are there any questions from any of the commissioners?
No, I'm okay. This is good.
Final answer.
Well, just a closing comment. The first 2 strategies are probably going to happen, because they're just good business. But the number 3 through 8 are kind of up to you and up to the city to kind of make those a priority. I know staff time's always limited, but I'm sure that any input or you could give the city regarding what you think would be the next priorities beyond 1 and 2 probably would help Renata and everybody to determine how to focus the next 6 months or a year of time on. Some of these could go well into next year, but it would be great if you could, think about. I know maybe Renata can organize maybe at the next meeting some way to kind of help kind of talk through these and help you prioritize this.
Well, the type of companies that would be under number 3, would that include like the large dealers that do agricultural support? The one that comes to mind is Oregon Vineyard Supply. I think they go by OVS. They're down in Hubbard now and Newburgh, I believe. And they sell tractors, Kubotas, and others, and orchard equipment, filbert harvesters, and vineyard supplies. And is that the kind of service-related, agricultural service-related business might be envisioned in that, or is this like processing plants? And
yeah, and I think that's probably a strategy that needs to be better worded, because I originally was thinking about the supply chains to larger processing plants like Dave's Code Red. But then as we realized there's also this machinery and goods that need to be provided to some of the ag and farmers in the area and vineyards. But then at the same time, I also want to make sure that Canby's on the map for companies that are looking to expand that can't stay in Clackamas, that want to grow. And so it could be all types of agricultural producers and suppliers.
okay,
And so
so it's pretty broad then.
yeah, I think we need to broaden the strategy a bit.
And so Renata, now what's our next step? That was cruel. I'm sorry. Well, actually, that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask Greg, unless there are other questions for Todd. But
I've got one on your inputs there. On the employment, you've got a job loss in retail of 32 positions. Was that in one fell swoop, or was that just little fibs and dabs? Also, it doesn't look like public administration seems like a very good thing to go into, with 20% drop in public administration positions in Canby. Is that right?
I was down in the
want to see where
Because
you're
I
getting at.
assume that's a combination of, well, I'm guessing that a bunch of that is out of the school district,
Oh,
because I don't know what other public administration we have other than city managers.
It says local and state government, low quotient and projected employment growth is extremely low. It says low growth, weak cluster. I don't agree with the weak cluster.
Well, the decline is 19% on the public administration, and then for retail, it showed, there are only two categories that show a decline, retail being one with a job loss of 32. And again, I'm just wondering if that's, you know, Freddie's laying off or going to part-time, or whether that's just individual stores, but I'm guessing that you don't have that on the tip of your tongue.
well, you know, the one thing about that particular table, it's based on census information as opposed to state employment department data.
Well,
So
I
always-
thought you were using all in-plan.
Oh, no, that table is really census.
Okay.
But then, when I'm talking about county business establishments and estimated employees, that's based on the state.
So numbers may not add to up to 100%.
Well, I try to look at all the tea leaves.
Okay.
And that, you know, the retail is probably down a little bit, just because retail spending's been weak. But that public administration category, from the census, the way they count it, could include libraries, schools, city governments, and it's not just Canby, there's Hubbard, they have a few staff.
All right.
But
Almost at least
it does look like
Just
a
wondering
pretty-
if Ellis was laying off a bunch of people and we didn't know about it for the past 10 years.
Probably the schools,
That'd be higher education schools.
be a blend between education
Both.
and what's showing up in schools, but
Well,
Maybe
I wouldn't worry
education
about that
first,
too
like
much. Yeah,
Teachers and public administration, maybe higher ranking.
but thanks for diving into the data.
Okay, any other questions? Greg, do you have any wrap-up comments on what's our plan now?
Yeah, in fact, that kind of leads into, I'm glad Renata's here. One of the things Renata and I talked about is these are kind of tools that Renata's going to be using in an economic development plan, and so she can talk a little bit about that. But these types of things are something that she can use to go forward with an economic development plan to broaden what this says up here. So, but I'll let Renata expand on that.
Right, my next step would be to bring this forward to the county community response team, which is leaders from the community and business leaders, to vet this, vet the recommendations, and make sure it's something that they're comfortable with. There may be other pieces that they would bring to light that would change the strategy a little bit, but I really think that Todd's recommendations are well-grounded based on my knowledge of Canby and working here for 2 years. So my next step would be to craft this into an economic development strategy that would be coming your way in March. And then pending approval and endorsement by the city council, we start implementing.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments for Renata or Greg? Okay. Thanks very much, Todd. That
you.
really helps. I have a much better feel for what you presented, what was written, so that's helpful.
Appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is to adjourn, but before we do that, I'll give the community an opportunity to address the agency board one more time, if anybody would like to have a comment to or with us, and not seeing a rush to the podium. Anything else? Greg?
Nothing.
Okay.
Move we adjourn, sir.
A second.
Motion and second, Commissioners Hodson and Hensley to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.